Should you become a monk? That's a very personal topic that you need to figure out for yourself, but in this video we're going to be exploring some of the themes involved and some questions and issues that you should ponder before making such a big leap. But I really want to make this video because I think being a monk is a fantastic way to serve others and to really commit and focus on the spiritual journey. But if you ask your friends and family or society in general about this question of becoming a monk, they're very likely to just look at you weirdly and not be able to empathize with you at all, because it just doesn't go at all along the grain of what society expects. So I really wanted to make this video just so that perhaps people could feel like you're not going crazy. It's a valid question. It's a very noble thing to be considering. And let's talk about what this all involves. And now for the most exciting part of this video, which is why would you want to become a monk? So if you're watching this video, it could be simply out of curiosity, but if you already have the intention of maybe becoming a monk, you probably already have a deep calling within you that this is something you want to do, which is intuitive in nature and deeper than rationality, which is great. I think if you have a strong intuitive calling, that's good enough. That's all you need. But maybe you're watching this video because you want some more assurance and your logical brain maybe wants to make sense and get clarity on why do you want to do this seemingly crazy thing. And that is good as well, to find clarity. So what's important is that you honestly find for yourself the reason you want to become a monk. But some suggestions maybe, or some reasons that I would be attracted to be doing that, and which maybe other people are as well, I'll mention now, and I'll go through them quickly. The first is attaining a breakthrough level of consciousness more permanently than the layman can, because I think a normal person can quite easily, you can even say, definitely it's very possible to attain really high peaks of consciousness. But because you have all these daily distractions in life, such as maybe work or just chores, you're going to be sort of dragged back down and fall into your normal habits. And there's going to be this roller coaster effect where you're slowly going up and up and up. But as a monk, you can attain these breakthrough levels of consciousness and then focus on them more with no distractions or little distractions. And so your breakthroughs of consciousness into states of vast love, oceans of love, can be more permanent and just longer lasting, maybe last your whole lives. And if you can permanently stay above that breakthrough level into this love space, then you can scale that up exponentially over your lifetime, and that is worth so much, making that shift from normal consciousness to a breakthrough level of consciousness permanently. So that's the first reason. The second one that I think a lot of people would be attracted to the monk lifestyle is ultimately freedom from suffering, which is a huge one. I think everyone suffers in life, of course, some people more than others because of life situations or perhaps internal brain chemistry. But for whoever you are, once you taste these breakthrough levels of consciousness, I think compared to your normal consciousness, the contrast, you can really see how much suffering there is in daily life. And wanting freedom from that is a noble, worthy goal. And when you're free from all the suffering and also free from your karmas and nature's wiring, which is pushing and pulling you in all directions, then you're in a much better place to just be yourself and to serve others and to be a beautiful aspect of the world, rather than one that is controlled by one's karma. Now, the third reason, which I think a lot of people do tend towards becoming a monk, or they entertain the idea, which for me is more questionable, it needs a bit more clarity on the topic, is that of renouncing society. So the reason I think it's more questionable is you need to look at your motivations. I think the valid, good motivation for renouncing society or wanting to do that is because you don't want the distractions, because society does, of course, distract you in a lot of ways through work and through personal relationships, the commitments that involves, and all sorts of complex reasons. You know, society has all sorts of complexities associated with it. And if you just want to cut all of that out of the picture because you want to focus on spirituality, then that's a really good, valid reason. But if you want to renunciate because you're basically pissed off and just had enough of society, then I would question that a bit more. You have other options than becoming a monk. For instance, there are other societies in the world. If you don't like your particular culture, well, you could move towns or cities or states or even countries to find places that are more in line with your personal values. Also, it's worthwhile to remember that becoming a monk is no picnic. If you've just had enough of hard work and just want to relax a bit and not work so hard, then becoming a monk might be a bit of a shock to you because you'll have to probably wake up early in the morning, do things which your body finds uncomfortable, that your mind finds uncomfortable, and all the internal icky, yucky stuff within you, you need to work through that. You're not just going to lounge next to a pool drinking margaritas all day if you renounce society and become a monk. There's going to be still a lot of life that you need to do, and you're going to have to help maintain the organization, the monastery. You're going to have chores to do. So that's something to keep in mind if you want to renounce just because you've had enough of the whole working thing. Also, if you see a particular flaw in society, in your society, that you don't approve of, remember that you have the power as a part of it to change it from the inside out. And there are many, many aspects of society which people find repulsive and that they don't want to be a part of. But don't be too much of a victim. Remember that you can help change things for the better, and that you can be the change that you want to see happen in the world. Okay, now for the fourth reason that I think someone might want to become a monk, which I think is a fantastic reason, which is often overlooked, is that a formal spiritual tradition can really help guide you through deep or altered states of consciousness. And if you're someone who, for whatever reason, I'm going to use the word gifted here, has the gift of being able to easily access altered states of consciousness, then you might find it easy to go to interesting places, but you might find it harder to be grounded and to direct that energy into a place that leads to liberation, freedom, love, and breakthrough levels of consciousness. So for example, people perhaps with mild schizophrenia who literally just have visions, or all sorts of, society might call it mental disorders, where you might be just experiencing all sorts of altered states of unusualness that maybe most people can't relate to, or most people only experience on psychedelic drugs. If you're someone that just naturally has those things happen to you, then becoming a monk can be a way to turn that, what society might call a disability, into a gift. Because society sees what your brain is experiencing as, they can't focus on sitting in front of a computer, doing their job all day and working on Excel sheets, because they're just going to have all sorts of visions happen to them. But as a monk, that can be a really big gift, because you can understand maybe stories and the mantras or whatever practice you're doing on a more abstract, intuitive level of consciousness. But again, I don't want to go on about it too much. Being part of a spiritual tradition that's been around for hundreds or thousands of years, they really know what they're doing. They'll really guide you, if it's a good monastery, a good organization, into a positive direction, so that you don't feel like you're going through life experiencing these altered states, just drifting through life with no aim or no direction, just experiencing randomness. Instead, that energy can be focused towards meeting maybe God, having breakthrough levels of consciousness, and freedom ultimately. So I think that's a good reason. And maybe some people have a normal state of mind, but they just find that as they meditate over the years, these meditations are becoming more and more abstract and powerful, and they really want to capitalize on this new gift that they have. Perhaps, many people call this the opening of the third eye. if this is happening to you, then becoming a monk can just help accelerate that into a good positive direction. So those are the reasons that came to mind for me, but it doesn't matter if your personal reason is different. What's really the important thing, I think, is to identify why you exactly want to become a monk and be fine with your honest answer, whatever that may be. But again, this is only to clarify if your logical brain wants to really understand why you want to do this strange thing that most people wouldn't. But the core of it is that you have a deep intuitive calling that you want to pursue this. And I think that is good enough. That should be the main driver. Next, I would like to look at societal objections. Because if you decide to openly admit that you're thinking of becoming a monk, society and your friends and family are probably going to hit you with all sorts of reasons why you shouldn't, whether it's directly at you or just they seem like you're a crazy person. They're going to be reasons, common themes that come up as to why they think that becoming a monk is crazy. And of course, those ideas are going to influence you. So it's important, I think, to address those topics just so that you can feel within your body integrated and as if those objections are resolved, that you're not just ignoring those objections because it's uncomfortable. Truth and honesty and looking at a topic front on with openness is very, very valuable in life and in spirituality. So these objections, we shouldn't shun them and be ignorant of them. Let's look at them honestly. Now, the most common objection probably that's going to become at you straight off the cuff is this idea that if you become a monk, you're going to do nothing or like waste your life, because monks, yeah, they don't do anything, right? They just sit around doing nothing. But you've got to remember this is just plainly not actually true, because as a monk, apart from the spiritual inward journey of liberation and breakthrough levels of consciousness, you are going to be interacting with people on some level, depending on which monastery you're at. But there's probably going to be outreach programs involved, which you can get involved with, like feeding the poor is extremely common, or giving lectures about spirituality to people, or having people in many cultures that have all sorts of life issues that actually come to monks for wisdom. So as a monk, you can be involved in just many ways of serving the outer community. And not just that, of course, the actual spiritual organization that you're part of, the monastery or the ashram or wherever you're staying, of course, has chores that need to be done, and there's logistics that need to be handled, So you can be involved in all of that and be as much part of the machine as in a corporation, except that as a monastery, you might have this feeling, this deep intuitive feeling of love towards the organization, and that you're doing something really good for the world and for the members within it, as opposed to in a corporation, you may or may not feel that it's just a money-making scheme. So that's the first objection, that you're just going to be doing nothing, which is plainly not true. There's going to be a lot of service involved towards others and towards your organization. But then the second objection, which I think you're likely to get a lot from your family, from your parents perhaps, is something that you should really look at honestly within your own body and how you feel about that emotionally, is that you're not going to have any children, which I think on a Darwinian evolutionary level, we are pretty much all programmed to have children, because your parents and their parents, all the way back to the first organisms billions of years ago, we've all had children, or they've all had children. So there's a deep karmic lineage of having offspring. And I think our nervous system really convinces us through society and through subtle ways, all sorts of reasons why we should at the end of the day have children. And it's true that becoming a monk usually does involve having no children. So that's something you really need to look honestly at. Is that something that you're comfortable with? Because a lot of people have this very, it can be a really noble desire to have a beautiful child and to raise them well and then to send them out into the world, and then a cycle of beautiful karma can continue if you raise your children really well and raise them consciously. Some people just plainly don't care about having children. It's not an issue to them, but that's something you should honestly look at and not just ignore. Don't just become a monk and then 5 years later realize that, oh, I do really on a deep level want children. Or maybe that is what you do and then you stop becoming a monk. And that's fine as well if that's what you did. But if you assume that, or if you think that you might want children in the future, maybe you could become maybe you could find a monk lifestyle or a monastery that does allow having children, or one where you can become a monk for a certain period of time, but where you're not taking a vow of celibacy for your whole entire life. Also, there's the other aspect, which is similar, of no marriage or no partner, not falling in love with the opposite sex or with whoever you like. That is something you should honestly look at as well. I do know, however, that marriage is becoming more and more allowed over many monasteries over the world. So you can look inside yourself. Is marriage and falling in love something that you really, truly want? If it's not, then you can join a monastery, anyone that you resonate with the most. But if you do really want to get married, then simply join a monastery that allows marriage. And if you're single right now, you've got to remember that you might think that becoming a monk gives you much less chance to meet your soulmate. But if you're a monk and you're around spiritual people, then that probably raises your chances of meeting your perfect spiritual soulmate, because you're in a spiritual setting and the people around you are also going to be extremely interested in committing to the spiritual lifestyle. As for children, I'm not an expert. I don't know how many organizations or ashrams allow you to have children as a monk. But that is something you could research and really look into your own personal body and emotions and feelings about how you feel on the topic of children and marriage. And now, for the third reason, this is the last one I'm going to cover. There are probably more, but the last societal objection I'm going to mention is that people might say that you're being selfish for becoming a monk. And this, I think, would be more from people who are a bit more blunt, that are straight to the point. They're not going to dance around your emotions. They might just tell you like, oh, that seems really selfish, because maybe your parents raised you and now you're just going to go off and become a monk. You know, you should earn money for the family and help support everyone else and send money back to your home country, or maybe just, you know, you're part of society, you should help contribute to it, help it run, and you shouldn't be afraid of hard work. We all have to work hard. You should too. Don't be so selfish and just go sitting on a cushion all day meditating. So that might be the objection of selfishness. But again, it's just plainly not true, because as a monk, you're going to be contributing to society through outreach. And also your own spiritual inward journey has a lot of value. Liberation and love and breakthrough levels of consciousness are arguably the purpose of the human consciousness and the human form. So even if it is selfish in the sense that this is what you want to do, that's okay, because it's a worthwhile thing to do. And you can see a bit of the double standards here, because if, for instance, you buy a nice house or even a car or a nice watch, whatever, those are obviously selfish things to do. If you want a nice watch, go buy it. Society is not going to point at you and be like, how selfish were you for buying a nice watch? If that's a thing you wanted, you can do that. That's within your rights. And it's similar with becoming a monk. If that's what you want to do, the only reason society is telling you not to is because it's a bit threatening, and because it's going to probably in some way be uncomfortable to the people around you, because that just opens the door of too many uncomfortable questions. Or maybe it's your actual parents telling you that you're being selfish, so obviously they had expectations of you that you're going to continue their genetic lineage and start a family and send money back to the family. So this objection of selfishness is true to an extent that you're putting your needs above theirs, but then again, you are going to be serving the community as a whole, and your personal desires of spiritual aspirations are very noble and worthwhile, and I personally would applaud you for committing to the spiritual lifestyle in such a way as becoming a monk. And now for the final chapter of this video, which is what should you do then if you want to become a monk? If this seems like something that you still want to do even after watching this video, then you might be wondering, so how exactly do I go about doing this? Do I just Google search how to become a monk, or monasteries near me, or ashrams near me, and then just go join one? Well, I think there is a solid answer to this question that will basically ensure that you won't regret it at all, which is to go exploring different spiritual traditions for some weeks or months before fully committing to becoming a monk at that organization, because that way you're going to get a wide view of what is available as far as the spiritual lineages go, as far as your options go. And just that time spent meditating will give you a much better idea of what being a monk actually involves, because right now it's probably just ideas in your head. But becoming a semi-monk at an organization and doing nothing but what they tell you, doing nothing but being focused on the spiritual path, it's going to give you a great idea of what being a monk is going to involve at each of those organizations. And from that place, you can decide if you're going to commit further, where do you want to commit, what sort of practice do you want to be doing, and is it right for you or not. So you can really have fun with this topic. You can almost look at it as a gap year of traveling, but instead of doing the sightseeing, normal touristy stuff, you could go to East Asia and look at all the different Buddhist traditions, because the Buddhist tradition is broken down into, for instance, Zen and Vajrayana and Vipassana. You could do a month at each of those traditions. You could go to India and look at a Hindu ashram. You can spend a month at a Christian monastery, even at more obscure traditions. You could go to a Kriya Yoga ashram. You can sort of really take a whole year to just explore all these traditions. And if you spend a whole year going from monastery to monastery, practicing a month at a time with doing nothing but focusing on that spiritual tradition, that's already going to give you a huge insight into life. And then that's going to reveal much more clearly whether or not it's the right thing to do. Because I would advise not to just go jumping into a particular spiritual path without knowing too much about it, because there is a huge amount of variety between the traditions. So for instance, if you join a traditional, let's say a Catholic monastery, that's probably never going to talk about the topics of reincarnation or karma. You're just going to be absolutely ignoring that for your entire life. Whereas Buddhism is going to be talking about karma and reincarnation a lot. So maybe, however, you don't really resonate with the Buddha's teachings so much. You just resonate entirely with Christ's teachings that has like a real power to it. But exploring can never hurt. Of course, I think what would attract people to a certain spiritual tradition, a lot of people might be tempted, for instance, to go to Sadhguru's Parampara in India, because they just resonate with Sadhguru so much, which is fair enough. Go spend some time there, maybe spend 3 or 4 or 5 months there, just meditating all the time, doing all these courses and spending your days doing the practices. But I just don't think it could ever hurt to explore the different traditions, even if it does nothing more than confirm to you that you want to go down this path. Then it's good to have the contrast in life and to have the generalized knowledge that there are other paths, so that you don't get too stuck that you're in the only way to enlightenment, that there are other legitimate paths around you. And being a generalized mystic, I think, is extremely valuable. Any path that tells you that this is the only way to get to heaven, I would be cautious of, because that's a bit almost egotistical and arrogant, ignorant. Recognize the beauty in all the places that you go, and then decide which one is the best, because they're likely going to be all good options, but decide what's the best option for you. If you spend some time at these monasteries, decide, is there a teacher that you really resonate with? What community do you most resonate with? And just where do you want to go to? Where do you want to spend your time? So yeah, that's my final tip, to explore the traditions. And going back to the original question of should you become a monk, again, that's your personal decision. Look within, see if you have that deep calling. If you do, go explore. There can be no harm really done by going and meditating for months in monasteries. Yeah, I think that's a solid answer to the question, and I hope you benefit from that. But comment below if you thought I missed anything. Read the comments below to see others' points of views, and I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next time.